Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It starts with a pie, a pecan pie, specifically, that I burned so badly the crust turned into something resembling charcoal and the filling bubbled over like hot tar. The whole kitchen smelled like a campfire hosted by amateur sugar arsonists. I remember standing there in my tiny galley kitchen, holding the pie pan with oven mitts shaped like turkeys, one of those last-minute impulse buys I thought would be festive, and just staring at it like maybe, if I blinked slowly enough, it would unburn. It didn't. That was the first sign. The second was the dining room clock, a wedding gift from my aunt, loud as hell and always a little too fast. That night, it stopped, just froze at 4:17 p.m., right in the middle of the cooking chaos. I didn't notice until later, after everything, but something about it still gives me chills, like time just gave up. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. My name's Lisa. I'm 58 years old. I used to work in marketing, spent years convincing people that the right soap or shade of lipstick could change their lives. These days, I do freelance copy editing and keep too many houseplants alive out of guilt. This story is about my family, my brother, mostly, and a Thanksgiving dinner that, on the surface, looked like any other, but underneath, it cracked. I was hosting for the first time, not because I was dying to, but because Mom had hinted, not so subtly, that her knees weren't what they used to be, and your father gets hives if he hears the word hosting. So it landed on me. I scrubbed the apartment top to bottom, even the tops of the cabinets, like someone was going to do a white glove inspection above the spice rack. I bought new dish towels. I set the table the night before with mismatched wine glasses and linen napkins that I actually ironed. Ironed? Who does that? I had this plan. You know, that kind of obsessive mental itinerary that people like me, anxious, overfunctioning, cling to like a life raft. Turkey in by 9:30, mashed potatoes start at 1:15, wine breathing by 2, nobody cry until at least dessert. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. By 10 a.m., the turkey hadn't thawed all the way. By noon, I dropped the green bean casserole, and half of it slid under the fridge like it was trying to escape the drama. I cut my finger slicing onions. The dog threw up after sneaking half a stick of butter off the counter. And yes, the pie. The poor, pitiful pie. But I kept going, because that's what I do. Head down, smile up. I blasted soft jazz to drown out the smoke alarm, lit cinnamon candles like they could erase disappointment, and I put on the nice sweater, the one that makes me look like I have my life together, even when I haven't folded laundry in 3 weeks. Around 2:30, my parents arrived. Dad immediately complained about parking, then about the thermostat. Mom walked in with a store-bought pumpkin pie in a plastic clamshell container from the grocery store bakery. I tried not to react, but inside, something tugged. She never brought store-bought pie. She always baked it herself, even when she was tired, even when the crust came out lopsided. I almost said something, but then I didn't. I poured wine, poured myself more. We waited for my brother. At 3:30, I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts. Just a calendar notification reminding me to baste the turkey again. I almost laughed. He was always late. Always had some story. Traffic. A wrong turn. A gas station burrito emergency. But he always showed up. Until that year. I set his place anyway. Fork. Knife. Cloth napkin folded into a triangle. The chair stayed empty. And that's when I started to feel it, not just the stress or the disappointment, but something heavier. like there was an absence in the room with its own gravity. I kept checking the clock, which I didn't realize had already stopped ticking. The hours moved, the food overcooked. Conversation stayed mostly shallow. Dad ranted about politics. Mom kept picking lint off the table runner like it was a contest. I smiled through all of it. Even laughed at one point when Dad called my wine fancy grape juice for people who think they're French. But the chair, that chair, it stayed empty. And I kept pretending not to look at it. Around 6:15, I finally stopped checking my phone. I turned it over, face down, like it was misbehaving. We ate. We complimented the mashed potatoes. We told the same stories we always do. The one about Dad dropping the turkey in 1989. The time my brother dressed up as a pilgrim and got stuck in the school bathroom because of his cardboard buckle hat. And yet, he wasn't there to correct the details, to laugh too loud, to quote obscure movies while scooping cranberry sauce onto his plate. It felt wrong. The kind of wrong you don't say out loud, because saying it would mean admitting that maybe something deeper had already started to fall apart. By the time dessert hit the table, I'd stop pretending I wasn't looking at the front door every 5 minutes. I brought out the backup pie. Mom's store-bought one, warmed it in the oven like I could somehow disguise it as homemade. The crust was too smooth, too perfect, and the whipped cream came from a can that sputtered like it had performance anxiety. Still, I forced a smile and sliced it with flair, like a TV host on a cooking show that no one watches on purpose. We all had a piece, even though none of us seemed to want it. My dad took one bite and said, "Tastes like the bakery down by the car wash." Mom said nothing, just kept eating like she was chewing through drywall. The empty chair at the table had become a character, a presence, like a kid no one wants to talk about, but everyone keeps glancing toward. I tried so hard to play it cool. I told myself, he's just running late. He probably got caught up in something. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he didn't even know he was supposed to come. But he did know. I'd called him 3 nights before. I'd left a voicemail that said, "It's at my place this year. Same time as always. Don't be a stranger." No reply, not even a thumbs up emoji. And that was unusual, even for him. The thing about my brother, his name's Mark, by the way, was that he was always a little messy, but he showed up. Always. Usually with a weird bottle of wine or a thrifted board game nobody wanted to play. But still he came. He was the chaos to my order. I ironed napkins. He made paper airplanes out of them. I lit candles. He accidentally blew them out pretending to sneeze. We drove each other nuts. We balanced each other out. And that year, when the balance shifted, I felt it like a tilt in the earth. After dinner, Dad went to the couch to fall asleep to a game he wasn't watching. And Mom wandered into the kitchen, probably to rearrange my spice rack or critique my dish soap choice. I stayed at the table, alone, picking at pie crust, staring at the empty chair. I kept hearing his voice in my head, not saying anything dramatic, just something dumb. Like, "You know this cranberry sauce looks like a crime scene, right? Or who puts walnuts in stuffing? You trying to kill me?" I laughed to myself, then stopped. The laughter felt fake, off-key. Mom came back in, drying her hands on a towel she definitely hadn't used to wash anything. She looked at the chair, and then at me. "Maybe he forgot," she said. Like forgetting Thanksgiving was the kind of thing that happened all the time. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe." She sat down slowly, hands in her lap, fingers fussing with the hem of her cardigan. "You two haven't talked in a while." I shook my head. "A few months." She looked at me in that way mothers do, soft, but sharp around the edges, like she already knew something and was waiting to see if I'd say it out loud. I sent him the same invitation I sent you. I said, "Called him too. He's been different lately. I didn't answer that. Not because it wasn't true, but because I didn't want her version of different. I had my own. Mark had stopped showing up to a lot of things. Not just holidays, but birthdays, phone calls, the occasional Saturday brunch that I pretended I didn't care he bailed on. He'd always been the late bloomer of the family. That's how we put it nicely. Trouble keeping jobs. Trouble with bills. Trouble telling the truth when the truth was inconvenient. But he had this laugh, this enormous, no-holds-barred laugh that could pull you out of your own head. And a heart? God, such a big, complicated heart. But something had shifted after Dad's surgery the year before. I noticed it. He started pulling away, showed up less, talked in half sentences. He stopped making fun of things, stopped laughing, started sounding distant, like his voice was coming from another room. I told myself it was just a phase, that he'd snap out of it, that everyone goes through funks and he'd bounce back, eventually, like he always did. Except this time, he didn't bounce. He disappeared. That Thanksgiving was the first time I let the idea settle in that maybe he wasn't just being flaky. Maybe he didn't want to be found. Around 8 p.m., my parents left. My dad grunted something that might have been thanks, and Mom kissed my cheek too gently, like she was afraid I'd crack. I closed the door behind them and stood there, hands still on the knob, waiting for, I don't even know, a knock, a text, some signal. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the quiet, ticking silence of a broken clock. I didn't clean up right away. Just let the dishes sit in their own mess, like I needed the wreckage around me to match the wreckage inside me. I poured another glass of wine, sat on the couch, stared at the ceiling. The dog crawled into my lap and sighed like she'd been hosting too. I picked up my phone, stared at his name. Mark, just that. No recent messages, no little typing bubble, no clue where he was or what I'd done or hadn't done. And even though I'd never admitted out loud, even though I'd never said the words before that night, I felt it. Something was off. The next morning, I found Mom's pie container in the trash. That shouldn't have meant anything. It was just plastic, cheap, disposable. But I pulled it out, stared at the little price sticker, $6.99, and felt something tighten in my throat. She had never, ever brought store-bought pie. I know I said that already, but you don't understand. This woman used to wake up at 5 in the morning on Thanksgiving to start the crust, made from scratch, rolled out with the same wooden pin she'd had since the 70s. She guarded her recipe like state secrets, wouldn't even let me write it down. That year, she handed me the plastic container and said, "Figured it'd save you time. Save me time." As if I didn't know what she was really saying. She was tired. Not just physically, not just bad knees and reading glasses tired, but done tired. Like she'd been holding something up for years and her arms had finally given out. And I didn't notice it until I was standing in my kitchen the next day, holding an empty pie box like it was a funeral program. I think I started crying then, not loud, just a couple of those weird, shaky breaths that come out sideways when you're trying too hard to pretend you're okay. The house was still a mess, dishes in the sink, half a bottle of wine sweating on the counter, the dog sniffing under the table for crumbs. I could smell rosemary and something burnt, probably the stuffing. And underneath all of that, this heaviness I couldn't name yet, like something had ended, and I'd been the only one who didn't get the memo. I texted Mark that morning. Just a simple, "Hey, you okay?" No response. I told myself it was early, that he'd slept in, that maybe he was embarrassed for missing dinner and needed a day to figure out what to say. A week passed. Nothing. I started checking his social media, which was laughably sparse. A couple of blurry photos from concerts 3 years ago. One cryptic meme about cutting toxic people. And then nothing. I called him. voicemail. I messaged his roommate, a guy named Evan I'd met once at a barbecue. He replied, "Mark's been out of touch. Haven't seen him in a while. Let me know if you hear anything." Something in that message made my stomach flip. Not panic, not yet, but something deeper than concern. That little tug your gut gives you when it knows something your brain doesn't want to say out loud. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't want to worry them. Didn't want to deal with my dad shrugging it off and my mom going straight into prayer mode. I just waited, like I always did with Mark. I went through my old texts with him. There weren't many. We weren't the type to check in just to say hi. It was mostly me bringing beer or wine. Mark, tequila. You're welcome. Me. We're not doing tequila at Thanksgiving. Mark, your loss. Or me, mom says, wear something nice. Mark, tell mom I'm wearing a tuxedo made of Doritos. Me, I'm telling her you're serious. Mark, good. She deserves a warning. Stupid stuff. But it felt alive. He felt alive in those messages. And then there was this gap. A silence that started slow and then spread, like water under a door. At first, I didn't notice it. Then I couldn't unsee it. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Evan. "Hey, sorry to bother you." He said, I think you should come by Mark's place. I've been trying to get a hold of him too. My heart started doing that thing. When it starts beating so hard, it feels like it's bouncing inside your ears. I tried to stay calm, ask something vague, like, why? What's going on? Evan hesitated. I don't know. The place is locked, and he hasn't paid rent. There's mail piling up. I called the landlord, but I just thought maybe you'd know something. I didn't, but I went. Of course I went. His apartment was a third-floor walk-up with a broken buzzer and a mailbox stuffed to bursting. I knocked until my knuckles hurt. No answer. I peeked through the small front window, tried to make out shapes, maybe a shadow, a light, a sign, but it was dark inside. Too dark. Evan showed up 10 minutes later, looking as nervous as I felt. He had a spare key, hands shaking. He unlocked the door. Mark wasn't there, but his keys were. His wallet, his phone, and his coat, the green one, with the busted zipper. He wore every fall hanging on the hook, like he might come back any second. Except he didn't. We didn't know what to do. Evan filed a missing person report. I called Mom that night, left out some of the details. Said I hadn't heard from Mark and was getting a little worried. She said, "He'll turn up." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't stop thinking about the empty chair, the stopped clock, the store-bought pie, and how maybe none of it was random. Maybe that Thanksgiving was already a goodbye, and I just hadn't known it yet. The waiting is the worst part, not the dread, not the grief, just the day-to-day dullness of not knowing. When someone's gone and there's no headline, no body, no final word, just this long, echoing nothing. You learn how to function inside of it. You get up, you pour coffee, you go to work. Or, in my case, you sit at your desk pretending to edit press releases while refreshing your inbox every 10 minutes. It becomes routine, like limping. At first, I was checking in with Evan daily, then every other day, then once a week. Each conversation thinner than the last. No updates, he'd say. Me neither. I'd reply. We stopped saying goodbye on those calls. Just kind of trailed off, like a bad signal. One night, about 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I was sitting on my couch with a microwave dinner and a headache when my dad called. That was rare. He's not a phone guy. My mom makes the calls. He just yells things in the background, like tell her to check the brakes, or you ask her about that thing with the taxes. But this time, it was him. He said, "I saw Evan at the grocery store." I paused. Oh, he looked tired. Asked if we'd heard anything. I said no. Yeah, same here. A long pause. Then he said, "You mad at your brother?" I blinked. "What?" "Thanksgiving," he said. You looked mad when he didn't show. Thought maybe you two had some kind of spat? No, I said. We didn't fight? Then what, I don't know? Dad. He just didn't come. He was quiet again. Then, in a voice softer than I'd ever heard him use, maybe he didn't know how. And I just sat there, speechless. Anyway, he added, covering whatever emotion had just crept in. Your mom says hi. Don't forget her birthday. Click. I held the phone to my ear long after the line went dead. Maybe he didn't know how. It stuck with me. That Thanksgiving. We'd all sat at the table and danced around the hole Mark had left. But none of us had looked it in the eye. I started playing back old conversations in my head. Things he'd said that I'd brushed off. Like when he told me, last summer, sometimes I feel like I'm just taking up space. And I laughed and said, well, you've always been a furniture guy. Or the time he texted me at 2 a.m. Do you ever think maybe we peaked in childhood? And I replied, speak for yourself. I'm still climbing. I thought I was being funny. Thought I was being light. But now, looking back, I wonder if he was sending up flares and I just looked away. I went to his place again the following weekend. Still no signs. Still no clues. The plants were dead. His favorite mug chipped and stained, with world's okayest brother printed on it, sat in the sink. I picked it up, washed it, set it on the windowsill. I don't know why. On the way out, I stopped by the coat hook. I touched his jacket, the green one, the one he always wore like a second skin. I pulled it down and held it to my face. It still smelled like him, some combination of cedar and drugstore cologne and the faintest trace of cigarette smoke. That did it. I sat on the floor right there, coat balled in my lap, and cried. Not polite, cinematic crying, not single tear down the cheek crying. I mean ugly sobbing, the kind that folds you in half. And you know what's wild even in that moment. I still thought, what if this is an overreaction? What if he's just hiding out somewhere, licking his wounds, waiting to come back and make some dumb joke like, sorry I ghosted, had to go find myself. Spoiler, still a mess. But deep down, I knew that Thanksgiving had been the turning point. In the real tragedy, I think we all knew something was off that day. Mom bringing store-bought pie. Dad not asking where Mark was until after dessert. Me pretending I wasn't checking the door every 5 minutes. We all knew. And none of us did anything. Because it's easier to let the silence grow than to say something that might crack the whole table in half. That was the last Thanksgiving I ever hosted. The next year, Mom offered again. Said she felt up to it. I said sure. Didn't fight her. But it didn't feel like a holiday anymore. Just a meal we had out of obligation. Like we were going through the motions of a life that had already shifted underneath us. Mark's chair stayed in the attic after that. I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it, but I couldn't stand to see it either. And the clock, still frozen at 4:17. I never fixed it. Because honestly, I don't think anything moved forward after that anyway. It was always the dishes that got me. After a meal, everyone scatters. Some migrate to the couch, others sneak a nap. But the dishes, they sit in the sink like abandoned confessions. And that night, the Thanksgiving Mark didn't show. It was me and Dad in the kitchen, scraping plates in silence. He wasn't much of a help. He'd stand at the counter, drying one dish for 10 minutes like it was a precious artifact. But he stayed, and that was rare enough to note. I remember the sound of the faucet more than anything, the way it hissed like it was annoyed. My hands were deep in soapy water, sleeves rolled to the elbows. When he said it, "Do you think your brother's using?" Again, I didn't turn around, just stared at the back of a casserole dish, like it might answer for me. "I don't know," I said, quiet, honest. "Did you ask him?" I shook my head. "We haven't talked much lately. You always covered for him, Dad." Said not accusatory, just like it was a fact on the table. And it was true. I covered for Mark when he missed family things. when his rent was late, when he borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. I made excuses for him because I thought he needed them, maybe because it made me feel useful, like I was doing my part, the responsible one, the anchor. I drained the sink, watched the suds swirl down like some foamy storm. Then I dried my hands and leaned against the counter, finally facing my father. He didn't tell me anything was wrong. I said, Dad crossed his arms, the way he always did when he was guarding something inside. He didn't have to, he muttered. He looked thinner last time I saw him, eyes all glassy. He didn't say anything, neither did you. We stared at each other across the kitchen, two people orbiting the same grief with no idea how to land it. Then he added, almost like an afterthought, you're not responsible for him, you know. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it felt too late for that. I've always felt like I was. I said, even when we were kids. Dad nodded once. Yeah, I figured that. Your mom encouraged it. She still talks about how you kept him grounded, like you were some kind of emotional seatbelt. I chuckled. Some seatbelt. Didn't even keep him at the table. Dad picked up a dish towel and wiped his hands. Then, without looking at me, he said, I think I missed it, too. I thought he was just finding himself, taking the scenic route. Maybe he was. Dad shook his head. No one takes that long unless they're lost. And that's the thing about family. You can be in the same house, share meals, laugh at the same jokes, and still miss the signs. Still walk past each other, like strangers on a street. We finished the dishes in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because some truths are best left to soak a little longer. Later, after he and Mom had gone, I walked into the guest room where I'd set up Mark's bed, fresh sheets, fluffed pillows, a folded towel on the end like I was running some kind of Airbnb for ghosts. I sat on the edge of the bed, picked up the pillow, and held it in my lap. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I hadn't been angry that he didn't come. I'd been scared that he didn't want to come, that he'd decided whatever family meant, he didn't see himself in it anymore. Because absence isn't just about not showing up. It's about choosing where you belong and where you don't. And maybe Thanksgiving was his way of saying, I don't know how to be part of this anymore. Or maybe it was his way of asking us to notice he was slipping. Either way, I missed it. I lay down on that bed, fully clothed, face toward the wall, and let the room go dim around me. The guest room stayed untouched for months after. I couldn't bring myself to change the sheets. They still smelled like lavender and the faint hope that someone might return. Sometimes I'd sit there at night, just listening. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of the walls, the pipes, the kind of creaks that make you wonder if a house remembers who didn't show up. I still had his voicemail saved. It wasn't profound, just, hey, it's me. Can you call when you get a sec? No context, no urgency. But the tone, God, the tone. He sounded like he wanted to say more but didn't. Like he was hoping I'd read between the lines. I didn't. And now I play that message once in a while. Not because it gives me comfort, but because it reminds me what not to miss again. I started smoking again after he disappeared. Not proudly, not in that cinematic, rain-soaked, dramatic kind of way. It wasn't a rebellion. It was habit, muscle memory. A bad idea that felt like something I could still control. I hadn't touched a cigarette in over 10 years. But one night, maybe 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving, I found myself in a gas station parking lot, staring at a vending machine and thinking, screw it. The first inhale was disgusting, bitter and clumsy. I coughed like a teenager behind a bowling alley. But then, just like that, it settled into me like an old friend I shouldn't have let back in that night. I sat on the back porch, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, puffing away, like I didn't care what it was doing to my lungs. The stars above looked like dust scattered, uncaring, and the neighborhood was quiet, except for a dog barking 3 houses down, and the soft buzz of a streetlight flickering with indecision. I was thinking about Mark's laugh. You know how some people laugh with their whole body, like it lifts them off the ground a little. That was him. He used to laugh in the car, windows down, feet on the dashboard, yelling jokes into the wind. I can still hear it sometimes when I'm driving, like an echo, like a sound that got stuck in the upholstery. That night on the porch, I tried to remember the last time I heard that laugh. Couldn't. That scared me more than anything else. The thing about people who drift away is they don't always make a scene. Some don't even leave footprints. They just slowly stop answering calls, show up late, smile less, and before you realize it, you're carrying a memory instead of a person. I kept telling myself he was still out there, that he needed time, space, distance. But deep down, I also knew time was passing differently for him. It had been, long before Thanksgiving. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. A few days later, I got a call from the police. They'd found his car in a long-term parking lot near the bus station. Tickets stacked under the wipers like forgotten mail. Inside, his coat, his phone, an empty bottle of Coke. Nothing else. No signs of foul play. No notes. No tracks to follow. Just absence. They filed it under voluntary disappearance. A legal shrug. I told my mom that night. Sat in their living room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like her perfume, and said, "They found his car." She didn't cry, just closed her eyes. My dad didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, he always did love bus stations, thought they were more honest than airports. I didn't know what to say to that. For weeks after, I checked the mail like a reflex, half hoping there'd be a postcard, a scribbled apology, a sign that he'd needed a break but still remembered us. But all I got were credit card offers and grocery coupons. I kept smoking, not in the house, just out on that porch, usually after midnight, staring at the place where our lives used to intersect. The dog started sleeping in Mark's room. I don't know why. She was never close to him, but suddenly she'd curl up at the end of the bed, like she was holding a space. One night, I tried sleeping in there myself, just to see. The sheets were cold, even though it hadn't been that long. There was still a book on the nightstand, a paperback he never returned. I opened it to the page he'd dog-eared, chapter 17. The first line read, "Some people disappear twice once when they go, and again when you stop hoping." I shut the book, hard. I realized then that what I missed most wasn't Mark himself, but who I got to be around him. I was lighter, goofier, more forgiving. He made me let go of my grip on things, even if it meant chaos. Without him, I felt heavier, like someone who used to dance at weddings but now claps from the side. There's guilt in that, in how someone can shape you so deeply that their absence doesn't just feel like a missing piece, it feels like a missing version of yourself. And there's fear, too. Fear that maybe I wasn't enough, that maybe the signs were all there and I ignored them because it was easier to believe we'd have more time. One more holiday, one more chance, that maybe Thanksgiving was the last moment he gave us. And we sat around the table pretending nothing had changed. I wish I'd said something, even something awkward, like, "Are you okay?" Or, "You seem off," or just, "I see you." Instead, I smiled, passed the mashed potatoes, and pretended his absence was a scheduling error instead of a scream. Now, I sit on that porch, cigarette in hand, thinking about how I used to think everything broken could be fixed. But some things don't need fixing. They need naming. And that night, Thanksgiving night, what we all felt but didn't say, it was grief. We just didn't know it yet. He called once, weeks later. It was the kind of call you miss by seconds phone buried under a couch cushion, volume low. I saw the missed call flash up, and for a second, my heart stopped in that weirdly physical way, like it got pulled back hard on a leash. I stared at the screen. Marcel? No voicemail? I called back immediately, fingers shaking. It rang. Once, twice, then straight to that robotic message. The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. I tried again and again, same result. For days, I kept my phone charged at 100%, turned up loud, slept with it on the pillow next to me, like a worried parent, waiting for a teenager to sneak back in. But he never called again. That was the moment more than the empty chair, more than the found car, more than the half-spoken theories that broke something in me. Because he'd reached out. Maybe just a pocket dial. Maybe a full-blown change of heart. Maybe a final goodbye. And I missed it. I let it go to missed call purgatory while I was probably microwaving something I didn't even finish eating. And it haunted me. I told Evan. Finally. We met up at this bar downtown with too much wood paneling and a jukebox that only played songs you didn't know you remembered. I said. He called me. Evan looked up from his drink. When 5 days ago? He blinked. Why didn't you say something I didn't know what to say? He swirled the ice in his glass. You think it meant something? I shrugged. I think it meant everything. Then we just sat there. Two adult siblings who used to fight over video game turns and now barely knew how to talk about the crater Mark left behind. The bartender brought over a free round. Looks like you two could use it, he said with a half smile. He wasn't wrong. After that, the call became a ghost. It followed me everywhere. When I was driving, I'd imagine pulling over and seeing Mark at a diner booth, waving me in with that stupid grin. At the grocery store, I'd picture him turning the corner in the produce aisle, laughing at something dumb on his phone. Once, I thought I saw him in a crowd at the farmer's market. Same hair, same walk. My heart actually leapt. But when the guy turned around, it wasn't him. And I stood there, holding a head of lettuce, wanting to scream into the spinach bin. I never told my mom about the call, or my dad. It felt like a secret between me and Mark. One last thread, one missed chance. And here's the real kicker, I didn't delete it. Even now, all these years later, if I scroll far enough back in my call log, it's there. That little red missed call notification, like a flickering candle I never snuffed out. Sometimes I tap on it, just to see the timestamp. Wednesday, 3:14 a.m. What was he thinking at that moment? Was he somewhere cold? Was he scared? Was he about to do something final? Or maybe he was just lonely. And in that foggy early morning moment, I was the only name that felt safe. But I wasn't awake, and I wasn't there. There's a pain in that you can't really explain to people who haven't lived it. The pain of being almost needed, of being the person someone tried to reach, but didn't connect with. It doesn't come with closure, just static. Sometimes I play the timestamp game. I think, if I had answered, would everything be different? Maybe we would have talked. Maybe I would have convinced him to come home. Maybe I would have said, hey, it's okay to not be okay, like you're supposed to say. Maybe he just needed a voice, a human tether. Or maybe he would have hung up as soon as he heard my voice. But I don't get to know. And that's the part that lives in your chest forever. Not the loss, not the absence, but the silence that followed a chance you didn't take. After a while, I stopped bringing it up. People don't know what to say after a while. They mean well. He'll turn up. You did your best. You have to live your life, but those phrases land like feathers on a concrete floor. I got good at pretending, at talking about Mark in the past tense around people who needed it, at saying my brother was funny instead of is, because it made them more comfortable, even if it tore something inside me each time. But every time I sit down for Thanksgiving or any family meal, really I think of that chair and of my phone, that one call, the one I didn't answer, and I wonder, was that my moment to be the older sibling again, to do what I always did, to show up when he didn't know how? Or was that the moment I had to learn I couldn't save him? There's no real way to prepare for a funeral that comes without warning. They found him months later. I won't go into the details because it doesn't matter how. Not now. What mattered was that the silence ended with a knock on my door and 2 officers who wouldn't meet my eyes. He was gone. No more, maybe. No more theories. No more missed calls or half-hopeful sightings. Just finality. I remember standing in my hallway, holding the edge of the wall like it might fall over without me. The officers spoke in low tones, words like identification and personal effects, but all I heard was the echo of the Thanksgiving table, that dumb, polite laughter, the empty chair, my dad's hands shaking slightly as he passed the cranberry sauce. They let me see him. I won't describe it. That's not what this story is. But I will tell you this, he looked tired. Not in a tragic way, just spent. Like someone who'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for too long. At the funeral, I gave the eulogy, not because I wanted to, but because no one else could. Mom was a shell. Dad had gone quiet in that way men of his generation do, retreating into old habits and lawn work in the garage, as if power washing the driveway might somehow undo the grief. I stood in front of a small group of people, maybe 30, and told them about the time Mark painted a smiley face on the ceiling with ketchup, or the time he got suspended for convincing half the class that the Earth was secretly a hologram. I told them he was a pain, a storm, a joy, that he once spent 3 hours talking to a homeless guy just to hear his story. I didn't mention the drugs, or the depression, or the missed call. I just told them he was loved. Afterward, I went home and sat at the table, alone. No guests, no turkey, just me and a frozen lasagna I didn't eat. I poured 2 glasses of wine, one for me, one for him. The thing about grief is that it changes shape. It starts sharp, like a knife to the ribs, but over time, it dulls, becomes a pressure, a weight. Some days it's in your throat, other days in your chest, and occasionally, when you laugh at something you know he would have found funny, it's in your eyes. I kept his backpack. They gave it to me with his things. Inside, a spiral notebook, a deck of cards, an empty bottle of 7-Up, and a crumpled photo of the 2 of us from when we were kids. We were wearing matching shirts Mom had made Big Bro and Little Bro. He was sticking his tongue out. I was trying to look cool. I put the photo on my fridge. One night, I was standing there, eating cold Chinese food with the fridge door open like a feral bachelor, when I saw it, that picture, and I just started crying, out of nowhere, like a faucet finally remembered it could turn on. I cried for the version of him that could have existed, for all the birthdays that now felt like countdowns, for the time he called and I didn't answer, for the way the world kept turning, even though it felt like it should have stopped. After that, I went back to therapy. It was slow. I hated every minute of it. But eventually, I learned how to sit with the silence, to name things I'd spent years avoiding: guilt, shame, fear, love. I stopped smoking again. I started cooking real meals, even when it was just me. And one afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, I found the old Thanksgiving box paper turkeys, fake leaves, the thankful banner we used to hang over the entryway. I took out one of the napkin rings Mark had carved his initials into it with a butter knife back in high school, and I held it in my palm like it might pulse with some kind of meaning. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because that was Mark. A mess. A flicker. A flash of brilliance that burned out too fast. And somehow, even now, I can still feel the heat. The house feels smaller when it's just Mom and me. It's been a few years since the funeral. I don't go over often, maybe every couple of months, but when I do, it's like stepping into a bubble where time stopped on purpose. Same curtains, same rug, same faint smell of lavender and old paper. Even the fridge hums with the same slightly uneven buzz it's had since the 90s. This time, it's November again. She's standing in the kitchen when I arrive, wearing that ancient apron with the stitched pears on it. Her hair's shorter now, grayer too, but she's still got that thing she does where she taps the counter with her fingers when she's thinking. She smiles when she sees me, but it's that quiet smile, gentle, careful, like maybe if she's too happy, she'll break something. I thought you might not come this year, she says. I almost didn't, I admit, and we both know why. There's no big dinner planned, no guests, just 2 place settings and a chicken in the oven instead of a turkey. She offers me wine. I take it. We sit at the table, clinking glasses with a soft cheers and letting the silence between us fill with all the words we still don't say. After a while, she says, I cleaned out the pantry. I nod, brave. She chuckles. You wouldn't believe what I found back there. A can of peaches that expired in 2004, and your father's emergency flashlight that only works when you hit it against the wall. I smile, even though my chest tightens a little. And this, she says, standing up and going to the drawer beneath the microwave. She pulls out a faded index card with red smudges on the edges. I take it from her carefully. It's Mark's handwriting, messy, slanted, half in cursive. Stuffing recipe. I whisper. He made it once, she says. Said he wanted to surprise me. I told him it was too salty, and he got so mad he threw a spoon into the sink and said he was never cooking again. I laugh. I'd forgotten that. But now I can hear it. The clang of the spoon, the muttered curses, the way he stomped upstairs and slammed the door, only to come back down 10 minutes later, asking if we wanted to play cards. Mom sits down again, watching me carefully. You're allowed to miss him, she says. Even the loud, annoying parts. I nod. I miss all of it, I say, even the silence. After dinner, I help her wash dishes. The kitchen light is too bright, but neither of us says anything. The water's warm, and the plates clink in that soft, rhythmically comforting way. She hands me a towel. I dry. And for a second, we fall into the same pattern we used to have when I was 15. Too old to be helpful, but too young to argue. When the sink is empty, she leans against the counter. I'm tired, she says. Go rest. I'll finish up here. She smiles, kisses my cheek, and shuffles off to her bedroom. I hear the door click softly shut. I turn off the overhead light, leave the little lamp by the stove on. It casts a golden glow across the counter. I glance over at the drawer, and without thinking, I pull it open again. Inside is a stack of old holiday napkins, the kind with fake gold trim and phrases like gather or grateful printed in looping script. Beneath them is a photo, loose, faded. It's Thanksgiving. I don't know which year. We're all there, me. Mark, Evan, Mom and Dad. The table's cluttered, the food half picked over. Mark's mid-laugh, his mouth open wide, one hand raised like he's about to say something outrageous. I sit at the table and prop the photo up against the salt shaker. Pour myself a splash more wine. I whisper, hey, like maybe, somehow. He hears it. Then I take the stuffing recipe and tuck it into my coat pocket. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but I want to keep it, like a secret, like a map. It's strange how grief can shrink you down to these little rituals. A card in your pocket, a photo on the table, the quiet hum of a kitchen lamp. But in those small things, those tiny, stubborn acts of remembering I feel him. Maybe that's all any of us get this year. I host again. It's just me. Really. No RSVP cards, no guest list. I don't even bother with the full spread. I make the stuffing Mark's version, overly salty, exactly how he wrote it, and a roast chicken instead of a turkey. I set the table for one, and then, without meaning to, I add a second plate. Habit, maybe, or hope. I place the napkin rings on the table. Mine, plain. The other one is still carved with that lopsided M. I light a candle, not for the ambiance, but because it helps the silence feel less empty. People always say grief fades, that it gets smaller over time. Maybe that's true. Or maybe we just get used to carrying it. Like a stone in your pocket, you stop noticing the weight. But it's still there, rubbing against you when you reach for something else. I look around my apartment. It's cleaner than usual. I scrubbed the baseboards earlier, like that would prove something. The smell of lemon cleaner and roast chicken hangs in the air. My windows fog slightly with the warmth inside. And outside, the city moves on like it always does. Cars rushing, distant voices echoing, life pulsing just out of reach. I sit down. I pour a glass of wine. I eat quietly. Each bite of stuffing tastes like a memory I almost forgot. The burn of sage, the mush of soggy bread cubes. That one time he dropped the whole bowl on the floor and blamed the cat, even though we didn't have one. I smile. Later, I clean up slowly. No rush. No one waiting. I tuck the napkin ring back into its little box, fold the recipe card neatly, wrap the leftover chicken. All these tiny, pointless acts of care, but they feel holy somehow. Then I do something I haven't done in years. I pull out the old voicemail recorder. It's ancient. I kept it in a drawer. Not even sure it still works, but I plug it in, press rewind, and wait. It clicks, buzzes. Then hey, it's me. Mark's voice. He sounds tired, a little hoarse, like maybe he's been walking or drinking or both. I don't know. I guess I was thinking about that last Thanksgiving, the one with the burnt pie, and Mom bringing boxed stuffing, and Dad stabbing the turkey like it owed him money. A pause. I guess I miss it, even when it sucked. Even when we were pretending everything was okay, I miss us. Anyway, I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just wanted to hear your voice. Or maybe I hoped you'd pick up. That'd be cool. Okay, that's it. Click. That's the whole message. I forgot I saved it. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. But there it is, proof that he wanted to come back. That maybe, for a second. He did. I rewind it. Play it again. I close my eyes this time. Let it hit harder. The room feels softer after. I think about who I was when he called. Who I was at that table. Who I've had to become since. Someone who sets two places anyway. Someone who makes the stuffing, even if no one's coming. It's a strange kind of peace. Not the tied up, happy ending kind, but the quiet kind. The kind where you let yourself feel the ache without needing to fix it. Where you stop asking why and start learning how to carry the missing. I walk over to the window. City lights stretch out like constellations. Somewhere out there, people are arguing over gravy, laughing over wine, playing cards with their cousins, burning pies. And here I am, still here, still setting the table, still answering the call, just late. It's quiet now. The kind of quiet that settles behind your ribs and makes you breathe just a little deeper, like the house has exhaled. And you finally have room to sit inside yourself. I turn off the kitchen light. Let the lamp in the corner cast that last warm hue, the kind that makes wood look golden, like a memory softened by time. I leave the voicemail player on the counter, unplugged, but present, a little relic of something unfinished. The wine glass is empty. The chair across from mine is too. But I don't feel alone, not exactly. I feel held, like all the things I couldn't say are floating somewhere in the space between us. And maybe that's enough. Maybe grief doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. Maybe just remembering is its own kind of love. I think about Mark's laugh, the sharpness of it, how it used to bounce down hallways like a rubber ball, uncontrollable, ridiculous. I hear it sometimes when I'm half asleep. It startles me, then it soothes me. And I think about you, listening, somewhere out there, in the soft glow of your own screen. Maybe you've got your fan humming. Maybe you've got someone you miss too. Someone you still set the table for, even if just in your heart. If that's you, I hope this helped. I hope tonight feels a little less heavy. So now dim the lights a little more. Let the silence settle in. Close your eyes if you want, and just breathe. Just be here, because you're not alone. You never really were.